What's keeping you from taking the first step? Is it time? What if you could choose from flexible class options? Is it money? What if competitively priced seminary offered academic scholarships? Do you think you're alone? What if your classmates were just like you, balancing careers and families with seminary? Hello, I'm Dr. John Nyhoff, president of Wesley Biblical Seminary in Jackson, Mississippi. Take the first step. Visit wbs.edu.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Well, of course, the way this works is that the governors are in charge of the National Guard. And so even the way this is structured right now, the governors will remain in charge of the National Guard in our states. And so we work in conjunction with the president, with the Homeland Security to make sure this is all working seamlessly. But listen, this is nothing new. This is something that was done under President Bush, under President Obama. And I got to tell you, the people of Texas are very appreciative that the President of the United States has recognized this is a problem. He made a commitment when he ran for president, and he's been adamant that he wanted to do everything he can to secure the border. Texas wants to ensure that we secure the border. And you need to understand, there's a mathematical need for this because the people coming across the border have increased dramatically, more than 200% month on month in the month of March of what it was the year before. What we've seen in the past is when we do add these National Guard, it has a meaningful impact in reducing the flow of people coming across the border. And let me tell you why, because this is something that has not been discussed. What is going on is people don't just happen to come into the United States. They get here by the drug cartels and by the coyotes who bring them across. Every time that we've increased the forces on the ground, there's been a decrease of the cartel activity, of the coyote activity, because they realize they're going to be losing money. Part of our job is to put these cartels and put these coyotes out of business. Sure. And whenever we're able to ramp up the support on the ground, it puts them out of business, and it's going to make the border a far more secure place.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. Thank you so much for being with us today. I have to say, Governor Greg Abbott is sounding very strong there, and with good reason. The president over the weekend signed an executive order ending catch and release. All of these actions should serve to put real teeth behind the desire to secure the border, even in the absence of proper action by the Congress, which really, this border enforcement, all of this really resides with them. They're the lawmakers. They are the legislative branch. They're supposed to be taking care of this. So it's good to see the president find workarounds for the inaction in Congress because of the obstruction of the Democrats. And we're going to be hearing more of that audio of Governor Abbott's visit to New York City for a stop into Fox and Friends, the morning television show on Fox News. We're also going to have John Hawkins, who's a columnist at townhall.com. He's going to join us today to talk about the 20 questions you're not supposed to ask in 2018's America. Interesting take he has on how conversation and how discourse has progressed in our society to the point where we don't have the option to say what we want. We have the option to think what we want, but expressing those thoughts and those feelings and those views, it's becoming more and more obvious that that's not permitted. So we'll be talking to him. Big news breaking over the weekend. Just dropped my little paper holder here. Big news dropping over the weekend was that Diamond and Silk are actually being deplatformed by Facebook. Now, I've had some similar actions occurring over on my page. My page is not nearly as big as theirs, but I've noticed that very few individuals who want to watch the live stream of the Stacy on the Right show are able to do so through their notification process. So the notifications used to go out to everyone. Now they're very limited. And so we're going to talk about that and what it all means. So many people are now writing about what they see as problematic activities on behalf of Facebook and looking into the history of Mark Zuckerberg as the leader and creator of Facebook and how he manages the company now, who has ownership of the company, how he doles out the stock voting, the voting stock, which he holds all of the voting stock. There's so much interesting information surrounding that. So we're going to get into that. And then, of course, we have our regular news. We're going to be digging into also some discussion surrounding the personal info. And the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes actually going on the record as saying that he's not getting the electronic communication document that initiated the FBI and DOJ investigation, and he's interested in getting that done and taking a look at that, and he feels he has the right to do so as a member of Congress, and he has the clearance since all of those agencies were created by Congress. So we're going to be digging into that as well. Right now, I want to get back to Governor Abbott talking about deploying National Guard troops to the border. What will they be doing there? What's the purpose? And what is his wish list for the border? It's number 2.
It's been recognized there are certain regions where it's going to be more difficult than others to place a wall, and that's precisely why we need more assets on the ground. And some of the assets will be, because of the National Guard, doing functions that the Border Patrol is currently doing, which is not being on the front lines. We will now have more frontline Border Patrol patrolling the regions, keeping it safe, making sure we're going to be able to have the boots on the ground as well as the technology and the assets on the ground. This is going to be a virtual and personnel wall to make sure that the country is going to be more secure at this time when we've had more than a 200% increase in the number of people who are coming across the border without authority.
But the guardsmen are going to not be able to do as much, right?
Well, listen, the way this works is the guardsmen will not be armed on the border. The guardsmen will be doing the functions that the Border Patrol have been doing when the Border Patrol have not been on the guard. Let me give you a couple of examples, and that is there will be air patrol. It now can be the National Guard as opposed to the Border Patrol doing their air patrol. There will be lookouts, people with eyes on the ground watching what's coming in. It can be the National Guard performing that function as opposed to the Border Patrol. Right. This is going to free up more Border Patrol to engage in the apprehension and arrest of the people who are coming across the border.
So what is he saying? I'm not sure if anybody really expected the National Guardsmen to be down there actually waging war on people who are trying to access the country illegally. But what they will be doing is freeing up people who are trained to do that work to get that work done. And it's needed. Like right now we're looking at 4,000. We have some states saying they're not going to send their National Guardsmen. Okay, good. Good for you, Oregon, and some of the other states where the more liberal governors are saying, well, we're not going to send our people. Okay. Thanks. We'll get it done without you. There are enough National Guard troops in this country and enough governors who are willing to cooperate for that not to be an issue. So not really worried about that. So in addition to that, we have so much more going on. And one of the things that has been a problem is that during the census on a 10-year basis, the rolling census that our country conducts, we've had a number of individuals, namely illegal immigrants, who answer the census, and then those people are given, funds are awarded based on those people being in the country. Now, you might say, well, we need that because those people are using services and they're accessing, all kinds of things that the census funding mechanism goes to assist with. And that could be true. That could be something that okay, sure, that's. But that's not constitutional. So the census is not meant to apportion government funds, taxpayer dollars, based on just any old person being here. It's meant to apportion funds based on citizens and what the needs of those citizens are. So that basically it equalizes the taxation rate across the nation. Even in high tax areas and low tax areas, you still have people, you still need schools, you still need roads, you still need bridges, and that money needs to be apportioned. So what we're seeing now is that a lot of these states like California, any state that has a really high population of illegal immigrants, those states are taking advantage of apportionment, and this bill is meant to stop that. So what are we talking about? You've got the proposal, which has been drafted by Representative Luke Messer. He's a Republican from Indiana, and he's saying that he wants to, in this bill, count only citizens and legal permanent residents for more than 130 national programs that use U.S. census data and formulas to apportion funding to state or local governments by the feds. So the quote from him, and LifeZet interviewed him, and this piece is up over at LifeZet, no locality should get an illegal immigrant bonus, which is what can happen under current law. Now, Messer, who's running for the Senate and is locked in a tough primary fight with fellow Representative Todd Rokita, Republican in Indiana, said he got the idea for the Funding Citizens First Act after President Donald Trump's administration announced that it would include a question about immigration in the census. So he says, I would applaud that change. I think it's completely appropriate that we know how many citizens reside in the country, how many citizens are in each state and in each community. And I really think it serves as a wake-up call, because for a lot of people, I think what happens with this conversation is they say, well, I don't think we should deport illegal immigrants. I think they should get to stay. Well, if they were actually informed of how many illegal aliens were living in their jurisdiction and how much additional money is going to support those illegal aliens being in their jurisdiction, I think people would have a much different attitude about it. Even the bleeding heart liberals understand that a dollar is a dollar is a dollar and it can't be spent more than once. Why do I say that? Because I've seen it myself. When people think it's just, well, it's 11 million people spread out over the entirety of the United States. But when you start talking about the individual states and the numbers, you see the look come across their face. And then I've seen people kind of shrug their shoulders and say, well, I guess we can't deport them all, but they all can't stay. Maybe there's a happy medium. In other words, they move from absolutely no way possible can anyone be deported to possibly some more of them can be deported just because, how much more of this can we afford? And that's the issue here. So Messer has put forward this bill, and he has some figures from his congressional office. So the federal government determines $690 billion in funding based on census data that includes all residents, whether citizens or non-citizens, legal or illegal immigrants. Now, why is that a big deal? Because, again, there's only a certain amount of money coming in, but they're doling it out based on population. So California has high taxes, but they're also taking a lion's share of the federal dollars when it comes to apportionment, because they have so many illegal aliens living in their state. And they don't want to give that money up. That's why they're bucking against the idea that someone can say to you on the census, that the census can ask you, are you a citizen? So he would change the formula to count only citizens as determined by the next official census and U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services data on green cards. So they would actually match it up with government data. Again, a scary prospect for bleeding heart liberals who really don't want to do any accounting or numbers or figuring up of figures. That's all scary adult stuff, and we're just going to be in our feelings over on the left. Messer offers as an example a comparison of San Jose, California, and Indianapolis in his home state. Both cities have similar populations, but San Jose has an estimated 180,000 illegal immigrants, some 66% more than the entire state of Indiana. Jessica Vaughn, who's a director of policy studies at the Center for Immigration Studies, CIS, said Messer's bill could provide a reason for local officials in sanctuary jurisdictions to reverse course. Again, it's so easy to say, I believe in sanctuary cities, and hold yourself up and virtue signal. And when you're at the cocktail parties and when you're someplace where everyone knows your politics, they kind of pat you on the back and say, we understand why you fight for everyone regardless of citizenship. But then when it comes down to, oh, look, my city or my municipality wants to increase the amount of money that they charge me for X because the current amount of tax dollars doesn't cover the bill. So now I need to pay an extra $400 a year based on my property, or I need to pay an extra X amount of dollars per month based on my level of taxation. When these things start to come together and people start to see it impact their own bottom line, that's when they start looking around and wondering, I'm sorry, did you guys say you were here illegally? Because that means you're not required to pay tax, but you're taking the services. And nobody likes a freeloader. You can be pretty, you can be skinny, you can be smart, but at some point, someone's going to ask you to pay your share of the bill. In fact, freeloaders only work when they're in groups and it's like a groupie situation, like the people who travel in entourages with TV stars and music stars and basketball players. And after a while, the basketball players shed those groupies because they're tired of paying for their $70 steak dinner when they all go out to eat. Instead of dividing the bill up, just one person pays it. This is similar to that, only instead of paying for steak once and, just deciding you're not going to invite that person out again, illegal aliens are at the table eating the steak every night, whether you invite them or not. Is that okay with you? I know for people in this listening audience, for the majority, no, it's not. But that's the question that we need to ask to the Bleeding Heart liberals. And the only way we get there is if we start dotting our I's and crossing our T's and get our little Excel spreadsheets out and run our little macros and get those formulas popping. And then once we figure out who's paying what and how much it's costing and really what the true cost of that steak dinner is, then we can discuss whether or not people should just stay here so we can feel good about ourselves. I feel good about myself now, and I say, out. Let's get it going. Let's get it out. All right, when we get back, we're going to have our next guest, good friend John Hawkins. He's going to be with us right after these messages. Stay there.
The influence of media is so very powerful over a person.
American Family Association and the family of Anna Bright want to warn you about the Netflix program 13 Reasons Why.
I really feel in my heart with all my soul that that show contributed to her passing.
After binge-watching Season 1 of 13 Reasons Why, 14-year-old Anna Bright committed suicide in the same manner depicted on the show.
To portray suicide, first of all, as an option is not a good thing. To portray it graphically, it leaves you vulnerable to the enemy's attack, which I think it definitely did for our daughter.
She took a permanent solution to a temporary situation.
Help protect our teens by signing the AFA petition urging Netflix to pull Season 1 and cancel the upcoming Season 2 of 13 Reasons Why. You can see Anna's story and sign the petition at afa.net. That's afa.net.
Up next, Carol Swain with 2 minutes to think about it. From poverty to professor, from GED to PhD, a bold Christian speaking truth to power. Here's Carol with today's 2 minutes.
Hello, folks. St. Paul made a point of telling the church in 1 Corinthians 15:17 that if Christ is not risen from the dead, then our faith is in vain and we are still in our sins. Heavy words to people who more than likely had not been believers very long. That one verse, though, is the linchpin of the Christian faith. Jesus is not in a tomb somewhere, but alive at the right hand of the Father, where he continually intercedes for us. All the other religious leaders we hear about, Muhammad, Buddha, Mary Baker Eddy, and L. Ron Hubbard, are still in their graves. So when we tell someone that Jesus is the way, that statement hangs on the truthfulness of the bodily resurrection of Jesus. If he's the way, then his way to salvation is an exclusive, and that's not overly popular in our inclusive society. Inclusiveness prefers Jesus as a choice, a way, not the way. We make choices every day. Most are inconsequential, like choosing a car. They're a mode of transportation that will take you where you're going. Not so with our religion. The fact of the bodily resurrection of Jesus takes away the spiritual buffet line. The fact is, our Lord is not in a grave. He is risen. He is alive, and he will return as judge and king. That's the Easter message we must take to a world that's lost its way.
To learn more about Carol and the Carol Swain Foundation, visit carolmswain.net and make sure you follow her on Facebook at Professor Carol M. Swain and on Twitter at Carol M. Swain.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I want to encourage you to head over to afr.net so you can learn more about 13 Reasons and Netflix. You guys heard me talk last week about how I believe we were one of the very first people to sign up for Netflix way back in the day. Like, they had barely been around a year when we signed up. And so we are some of their longest term customers, and we've been good customers because even during the time that we had cable and we kind of flip-flopped, we cut the cord, we cut the cable, we didn't have it for the first go was 3.5, almost just shy of 4 years. And then we got Uverse and had that for 3 years. And then we moved. And since the move, we've cut the cord again. And the entirety of that time we had Netflix. And for us, it was an option to watch television without the commercials and to access TV shows that were from my husband and my childhood. So we would find those shows and we'd let the kids watch them. And that was how we kind of got our kids hooked onto our methodology at the time, which was you don't watch TV during the week. And on the weekend, we don't just cut the TV on and you watch it all day. It's a show. Can I watch a show? And so we could show them these television programs with no commercials. And it was really, really beneficial for us. But of course, this was before the advent of the sexual revolution for LGBT and all of these different things. And since then, we have really seen Netflix evolve into something that is kind of crazy. In fact, our son was regaling us with the hypocrisy of Netflix in deleting Bill Nye the Science Guy. They've actually taken his programming off of the network so that they can revamp it, because he taught kids back in the day when my husband and I were kids, he taught us that your genetic makeup was determined by, of course, your DNA, and that your chromosomes determine your gender. And so he says, double X or X and Y, and that tells you whether you're a girl or a guy, blah, blah, blah. He had all these little sayings about chromosomes. And so that's how we learned. We never questioned whether we were girls or boys back then, because we learned from Bill Nye the Science Guy and our teachers in school that it was predetermined. There is no choosing your gender. Well, now that Netflix has bought into this ideological Kool-Aid fest, they're, having to go back and basically erase history. And so we were laughing about that. And so, again, we'll talk more about the services that my husband and I picked up to replace Netflix. But suffice it to say, afr.net to find out more about that promo you just heard about 13 Reasons and the tragic story of the girl who committed suicide. Now, right now, I want to welcome our guest to the program. It's John Hawkins, just an overall really hardworking, great guy who does a lot of writing, specifically a columnist for Town Hall. He used to have a huge website that was right-sided. And so it's my pleasure to welcome John Hawkins, columnist at townhall.com, to the program. John, thanks for joining us today.
Stacey, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
We've communicated by email and on Facebook, and we've met at conferences before, and it's been always just really, you're like the blunt force truth of columnists, especially you and Kurt Schlichter over at Town Hall, where you guys just put down week after week, grinding it out, the truth and information about what's impacting our culture, our political apparatus, all of that stuff. And so your latest piece was really interesting to me, because I've already run up against this buzzsaw personally and in my work, and others are running up against it in even more public fashion. And that is that there's stuff we're not allowed to ask anymore. Like it used to be, ask anything, say anything you want. Now it's, you can't talk about that, or you're not allowed to ask that.
We have gotten to the point that you can't have a rational conversation with a liberal. And the reason you can't is because they start with the assumption that either you agree with them on everything or you're an evil, racist, fascist troglodyte. I mean, there's a room for expression in their world somewhere between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. And the rest of us are just not allowed to talk about anything. If you do, well, you can't say that. That's outrageous. How dare you? And we don't even ask a lot of basic questions we should be asking our society to run our country.
So what's the answer to this? Because I'm just not of the mindset that I'm willing to stop talking about the things that matter. But we're seeing a lot of really strong actions being taken against people. The big story right now is Diamond and Silk, who, not everybody likes their brand of political commentary. But suffice it to say, they were hugely popular, and I think they really kind of galvanize people for Donald Trump. And whether or not you support Donald Trump isn't really the conversation. The conversation is they've had their reach diminished to the point where it's basically erasing all of their hard work that they put in over the last year and a half since they started doing those YouTube vlogs and then transmitted over to Facebook.
Well, I think those two are particularly interesting, and I think there's a lot of you can learn a lot about what's happened to the right in general since Trump's election with what happened to Diamond and Silk. First of all, they got demonetized on YouTube.
Me too.
So there are other conservative channels that are getting demonetized too. So basically, it just said, "Hey, you're conservative, you're not allowed to get ads." And they haven't done it to just conservatives, but those have been the ones who have been most targeted. And on Facebook, same thing. Facebook had a big impact, much bigger than most people realize, in helping get Trump and Republicans elected in 2016 because there were a lot of wildly popular pages, including mine. So what they did was they said, well, we're going to get rid of this. So they didn't just target us, but they did target us worse than everybody else. They've wiped out a lot of pages, and I think a lot of it is just they want to control it. They're saying, hey, we actually, if we let people talk about what they want to talk about, it's going to help the people we don't like. So we're going to control it. We're going to make a very determined effort. Hey, Diamond and Silk, they're not getting out there because they're very pro-Trump, and we want them wiped out. And that's exactly what they've done.
So let's dig into this a little bit further, because when you say they've wiped out some big pages, we're talking about rare. Let's talk about a few of those, because there's somewhere I want to go with this, and you're uniquely qualified to discuss it because you had a huge website that was a lot of the traffic was driven by Facebook, but you were providing original writing on that website. Let's talk about that for a second.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. With them wiping people out, basically they just made an arbitrary decision. And I can give you an idea if you want to know how arbitrary it is. We have a secondary page, or we had one called Click It Conservative News. This page, one day, is suspended. And we have a Facebook rep. We have someone we can reach out to, which is nice, because if we didn't have one of those, I can tell you we wouldn't have survived very long at all. But we reach out to her, and we're like, hey, why did this page get knocked down? So she spends weeks, literally more than 2 weeks, going back and forth with her own people, comes back and says, listen, your page was taken down. I can't tell you why it was taken down. I don't know. And I said, well, okay, is the suspension going to be lifted then? She's like, no. The suspension will stay in place for a full month. And I was like, okay, well, how can I keep from having it suspended again? She says, I don't know. How do I, is there anything I can do to prevent this in the future? I don't know. I mean, that's what you're getting with Facebook.
So I had something similar. I've not been suspended, but I have had my I had my YouTube channel demonetized, and so I didn't make a big deal out of it because I've never really actively monetized my channel. So it was, some of my videos had ads and most of them didn't, and I didn't have a ton of videos at the time. I just started live streaming this show to YouTube. But what they told me, so what they told other people they demonetized was you need 1,000 subscribers. Well, I already had 2,000 subscribers, which in YouTube world is nothing. But they told me I didn't have 4,000 viewing hours within the last 2 years or something like that. So since the inception of the page, I had far more than 4,000 viewing hours, and I had the requisite number of subscribers, but they basically adjusted their criteria so they could demonetize my channel. And that's what they've done. On Facebook, they just limit the number of people I can reach. So I could have a 2-hour live stream video, reach 18,000 people. Again, not huge numbers. Now it's a couple thousand, 3,000, 4,000. And I know that they're actively changing the algorithm because some days I have 7,000 views on a 2-hour video and other days I have 1,800. So I know they're playing around with it. The question I have, because if I've seen it for myself, I know bigger channels are experiencing it to a much larger degree, is what do we do about it? Because I've seen a lot of people saying it's time to leave Facebook. I've seen people actually deactivate their accounts. I know some people are leaving, but the majority of people are actually spending more time on Facebook discussing getting rid of it than they are actually deactivating their accounts. What are we supposed to do?
Well, there are solutions to it, but they're ones conservatives don't like. Because what I'm going to tell you is I think Facebook should be broken up as a monopoly. Google should definitely be broken up as a monopoly, no question about it. Something like Twitter, you could probably go somewhere like Gab, which is kind of small at the moment, but it could build up. We've got to talk to these people in Congress and get them to at least throw some regulatory shots across the bow. And, they don't even have to necessarily regulate them, but just go out and talk about it a little bit. Say, hey, they're very concerned. They're worried about how this thing's going. Hey, Facebook, you said you're not a publisher. But when you're picking and choosing, when you're saying only liberal news is going to get out, you are a publisher. You stop being just a platform. These things are solutions that can work, that the left would use. We don't want to use them.
Why?
And that's too bad.
Why? Why are we so hesitant to... Because in my opinion, so later on the show, I'm going to discuss, I found this article, and you probably already read it. It's lengthy, and it's over on Wired.com. And it's all about how Mark Zuckerberg has been exposing people's private information for 14 years. Since before he owned and started Facebook, he's been doing this. And every time he does it, he then goes out and he publicly apologizes. He took out an ad in the Washington Post. He always apologizes and says, we've got to do better about securing your data. And then he goes on and the next breach is even larger than the one before. And there's some really interesting information in here. But the point is, why do we expect Mark Zuckerberg to ever behave differently than how he has always behaved since before he created Facebook, which is he likes reading and having access to all of this private personal information. And when he feels it's beneficial to him monetarily, he likes to sell it. He's an information broker and he's a nosy Nelly. He protects himself. He deletes his own messages. He can actually delete messages out of your Facebook message box that he's sent. And he's done that before, but he doesn't provide the same services to us regular. We're products to him.
Well, that's exactly right. What Facebook really sells is information. And I don't think people on a real level understand how much of an impact what's going on with these social media sites is going to have over the future. There was a time, for example, and you remember this very well because you were in there too, when there was a blogosphere out there. Mm-hmm. You had all these small blogs, and they're all doing their own websites. But what happened is all of it moved to social media. Everything is going to it. I mean, this is your public square now. This is your soapbox. And it's now controlled by people who don't like you very much.
Well, one individual specifically.
Sure you don't have a voice, and guess what? They're being successful in a lot of cases. And conservatives, I have to tell you, sometimes what's a good way to put it? We fetishize principles to the degree that, we'll take a certain thing and, well, I don't like that. That's against my principles. Yeah, but, you're going to get really killed on this. What's your solution? I don't have a solution. I'm just going to get killed. I don't want to think about it. And to even take something like breaking up monopolies, there's nothing unconservative about breaking up a monopoly. In fact, it's one of the most conservative things you can do because it helps the consumer. But you hear people, well, we can't do that. We can't consider it. And, conservatism is not libertarianism. It is not, hey, we're not going to have any regulations ever. I think these guys need more regulations. And, you're not, conservatives don't like regulations. Well, we do like some regulations. I want there to be regulations on our food. I don't want, Hardee's making spit burgers for us without telling us, So we need to do the same thing with these social media places. And, the more it's going to become more apparent to people over time, but you're already starting to see it. And I hate to tell you, but that is your solution. You are not going to start a conservative version of Facebook. Okay, it's not going to work. They've already got, I don't even know how many billions of people on it. Well, that's a big part of the advantage of the service. You might be able to do a competitor to Twitter. Some of them have, but Facebook, it's not going to work. I mean, at some point, maybe we'll come up with something that completely sidesteps it. Maybe we can just send things to each other in our minds, and somebody's going to invent those helmets we all wear one day. But until that happens, you're going to be stuck with Facebook.
Okay.
And it has an inordinate, incredible impact on our discourse.
It does.
And I got to tell you, it's leaning heavily against us.
It is.
I think you're going to see part of that in 2020 and in 2018 when these elections come up.
Well, sure.
And they're choosing what news more than 100 million Americans see.
Yeah, they'll choose that, but
a big difference.
But John,
in how
what
people
about
behave and what information they know?
There are some websites out there that are still pretty huge that people still go to. Not all of the websites have been destroyed. And what I'm disturbed by is when we shut down the websites because the Facebook traffic is down. We don't give anybody a place to go once Facebook is really as vilified as I feel like it's going to be. Now, I think what's going to happen is as more of this information becomes available, people will begin to migrate away. Now, I don't know if it'll be 100 million people, but a huge number of people are going to migrate away from Facebook because they have such a bad taste in their mouth, knowing if you're an Android user, they also have all of your text messages. Every single text message you've ever sent or received since you started using the Facebook app. Now, Apple didn't allow them to scrape the actual individual text messages, but Google Android had no problem with it. So there's so much more information that people don't know about how this has really unfolded that there are going to be people who aren't as married to Facebook or are willing to go through the withdrawal pangs and they're going to get rid of it. So we have to have websites like townhall.com and stacyontheright.com and others for people to go to. And there are still big sites. I hope people are listening and that you're willing to call your congressperson or your senator and say, I want you to regulate Facebook, because that's the only way to stop somebody like Mark Zuckerberg. I'm putting your article up on Stacy on the Right, the Facebook page, obviously. Hopefully they'll let it get out because it's excellent. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on, Stacey. Always good to talk to you.
Hey, talk to you again soon. Have a great week. That's John Hawkins, columnist at townhall.com. Really knowledgeable guy, and he brings to the fore something important that we're going to discuss. We'll be talking Diamond and Silk and everything that's going on with Facebook after these messages, so stay right there.
I have enjoyed you guys for a couple of years, especially the Abraham Corner. I really, really love the entire program that I get a chance to listen to throughout the day, maybe just one particular program, if I have to jump in my car because I don't have the radio in my office. But I enjoy hearing about your family, and you guys are hysterical. And I really enjoy it. I just want to know if there's any way possible to squeeze in, maybe at the end of your broadcast, to give someone an opportunity to come to Christ. The listener who may have just stumbled across the broadcast for today, maybe give them the opportunity to accept our Lord Jesus Christ as their personal Savior. God bless you guys. Much love you.
It's so amazing to see how God is working through Urban Family Talk. Please partner with us for our 3-day share-a-thon starting Tuesday, April 17th, here on listener-supported Urban Family Talk. Listen to Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
Did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible, it says the heart of the fool inclines to the left, just kept popping into my mind.
Stacy on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk.
The reason why Jesus blesses you is so that you will follow him to the next step he has for you.
Dr. Tony Evans says that next step isn't about you at all. It's about the people God wants you to help.
He wants to bless you so that you can be a blessing.
A look at God's agenda for his people and what we can accomplish together as we carry it out. This week on The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans.
That's the beauty of possibility. Every human life so irreplaceable. I can't imagine life without you. It's just unthinkable. There's no one like you. No one like you. You're 1 in 7 billion.
We are all created by God with undeniable purpose. Learn more about beautiful possibility at www.radiance.life. Follow us on Twitter at Life Has Purpose.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
We don't lay out in the streets.
That's right.
And so I don't know where Facebook is coming from. I think this is a deprivation of our character. This is clearly discrimination. Mm-hmm. And this is also a violation of our civil rights is what I'm looking at here.
That's right.
Why don't they want you to be heard?
I have no earthly idea. So this is...
I have an idea. They don't want us to be heard because basically an election is coming up. President Trump won this election by the people, we the people, through social media. And whenever they found out that's how he won it, that's why they're shutting down conservative voices, people that is pro-Trump. How is it that somebody can go on to Facebook, post derogatory pictures of our president with his head being cut off and so forth. They let that stay there. But then you got two black chicks who's down with politics standing there just talking up our president, the American people, being behind everything in his agenda, and they want to shut us down. Well, that's not going to work with Diamond and Silk.
Wow. So you, as you know, Diamond and Silk, and welcome back to the program, everybody. StacyOnTheRight.com, AFR.net, UrbanFamilyTalk.com/Stacy is where you can find the podcast. Tune into those channels and please hit the subscribe button. What I'm recommending now at this point for all of the different channels is that you subscribe to StacyOnTheRight.com after seeing what's happened to Diamond and Silk. Different brand of conservatism, certainly, but there's similar aspects to it. They do a live stream show. They have a YouTube presence. They're conservatives. They support the president. They happen to be black women. Again, subscribe to my blog so you don't miss anything in case this deplatforming kick that they're on comes in this direction. I'm hoping it doesn't. I love live streaming to Facebook and I love using the platform to connect to people, but I am disheartened by the revelations that we've experienced. I find it sad and disgusting. Again, the human heart is depraved and God knows who we are. He knows what we are. He made us and we have sin in this world and we're going to continually struggle with that kind of stuff. But this is the kind of stuff you don't expect to see happen in America, really, honestly. I kind of feel like that Facebook's owner, Mark Zuckerberg, and the employees there, what they should do is they should just say, look, Facebook isn't for conservatives. But the reason they don't do that is because they would then have people who were conservatives, Republicans, people who were unfavorable to that position would leave the platform and it would negatively impact their bottom line, which is selling our personal data. So they want to keep the data, they want to keep the people, but they don't want it to serve as a tool that works against their ideological wish list. I don't think we should let them have their cake and eat it too. So I'm kind of in the investigative and decision mode. The mode before you make a decision is you try to investigate everything, you try to figure out what to do. And of course I'm praying about it because you spend thousands of hours building up a page and then, just get rid of it. I don't know. I'm not sure where we're supposed to go with this, but I definitely feel like, we're getting some alarm bells. What's happened to Diamond and Silk? It's alarming. And so here's the nutshell of what happened to them. So Diamond and Silk, obviously they moved a lot of their activity from YouTube. So they still have the YouTube channel and they still do things there, but they moved a lot of what they had as far as live streaming and content. They also utilized Facebook heavily and they had millions of people on their page. But the number of people who are on your page and the number of people you reach, really it's irrelevant. I've seen pages with 10,000 or 11,000 active users who check the page whether or not they get notifications, drive videos to multiple tens of millions of hits, where pages with much larger followings in the millions, if you look at the likes and the shares on their individual posts, they're similar to what I have. And that's because of the algorithm. They can just set the algorithm to show 4% of this page's likes, show 4% of those people notifications. And with that simple click of a button, only 4% of the people that you have on your page will see you. And I know this because I get on regular basis, at least once a week, someone emails me and says on Facebook, I'm not seeing your posts anymore. I like the page. Now I've gone back. I'd clicked show notifications. Now I have to go back and click it again. She says, I haven't seen your page in 2 months. One lady was like, I haven't seen your page in 2 years. I thought you were off Facebook. I went into the pages that I like. I clicked through from there and I see that you've been doing a radio show every day now. And she was like, I had no idea any of this stuff was happening. And I'm like, well, out of sight, out of mind. It's the same thing for me. When I don't see notifications for someone, I have to actually be prodded by something else. I'll think, oh, wait, I haven't seen such and such a page. And I'll go on Facebook and it's still there, live and kicking, but I'm not getting the notifications. And there's a limit to how many pages you can click see first. So, and even out of the ones you've clicked see first, they don't show you those every day. So you see the ones you've clicked see first, you see them regularly depending on how you interact with them. So it's so complex, it's almost not worth trying to figure out, right? But it is, because this is what we're dealing with. So Diamond and Silk have all of these people on their page. And about 6 months ago, they reached out to Facebook when they noticed that they just weren't getting anywhere. They were posting things, they were doing videos, and they weren't getting the likes and the shares that they thought that they should get. It was like one day, everything just dropped off and was very minuscule. So then over the past 6 months, they've been emailing back and forth, and you can find a whole stream of everything. The emails, they've actually done screen grabs of the Facebook messages between them and their Facebook person, and they shared that on their Twitter feed. So you have to find them on Diamond and Silk on Twitter, and you can read it. And they talked about how at one point, they were like, what is going on? And the person said, let me get back with you. And they said, look, your content does not meet the Facebook community standards. It's not appropriate for the Facebook community, which sounds a lot like some communist commune, right? The community has decided that your content is no longer appropriate, even though the people on their page love the content, even though the people who are interacting with them love the content. But they're saying at Facebook, we don't like the content because two black chicks who are kind of, from around the block, not your standard run-of-the-mill black conservatives. These two chicks are making it look like it's okay for black people to like Donald Trump. They're making it look like he's not a racist and a member of the alt-right and a KKK member in disguise. We got to put these chicks on minimal exposure. And so that's what they did. And it's ridiculous. So now I want to get into this. There's these stories that, so here's what you probably think. You're probably thinking, oh, you're going out and you're looking for these stories. I'm actually not. I told you last week, I was so upset about learning that the apps were scraping the data off of the phones that I kind of just, I haven't done a ton on Facebook. I haven't stopped posting there. I haven't stopped going on there, but I've just been kind of in waiting mode, just trying to figure out how does this thing work? Well, these stories are actually being shared with me, messaged to me, emailed to me. It's as if I'm trying to kind of like minimize everything that I can find out. And other people are like, oh, no, you don't. You're going to learn. You're going to learn what you've been playing with. And so if I'm going to learn, you're going to learn too. Facebook secretly deleted some of Mark Zuckerberg's private messages over fears that the company could be hacked. Now, this story is actually at businessinsider.com. So the high points of the story are that Facebook deleted private messages sent by CEO Mark Zuckerberg and senior executive years ago without notifying the recipients. So what that looks like is they actually had emailed back and forth. The executives of Mark Zuckerberg had messaged people, private messages on Facebook. And later, when the Sony breach occurred and they realized some of these major corporations are being hacked because people want to read what they're saying. And it's really embarrassing because people are exchanging thoughts and feelings in these messages that are completely not PC, like not the kind of stuff you want shared publicly. And I mean, isn't that what private messaging is about? When you think it's a conversation between you and someone else over a platform, not a public conversation, people tend to be more real. So that's what happened with Mark Zuckerberg. Deleting messages is not a function that Facebook offers to ordinary users. So because you're probably thinking, wait a minute, I've never been able to delete a message that I've already sent to someone. Because haven't we all sent a message that we're kind of like, I was mad. I'm not mad at you anymore. I wish I could delete that message out of your box because I don't want you saving that and holding that over me. I was mad. Now I'm not mad. But guess what? You can't do that. Not because it's not possible. The technology exists. The function is actually available to Facebook. And so that's what they did. Facebook actually purchased WhatsApp. WhatsApp and Instagram offer varying abilities to unsend messages, but Facebook does not. In explaining the move, Facebook said they made the decision after the 2014 Sony hack, indicating the company was concerned it could be the target of a data breach that could compromise user data. But they weren't concerned about your user data being compromised and you being embarrassed. They were concerned about their executives being embarrassed. So they're just sharing this info after the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And of course, the new number of people who have had their data breached in the United States is 87 million. Remember when it was just 17 million? Remember when it was 55 million? Now it's 87 million. I would say if you're an American and you have used Facebook, your information was probably scraped. So the functionality exists for use by Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO and co-founder of Facebook, And TechCrunch reported last week on Thursday that some old messages that were sent by Zuck and senior executives disappeared from recipients' Facebook Messenger inboxes, proven by the original email receipts sent at the time. The company appeared to confirm the unique arrangement, telling TechCrunch the change was made in response to an uptick in hacking. So the company raised the idea of a retention period, though there is no such thing for normal users. If a user long presses a private message on Facebook, a delete message box pops up, confirms that the function will delete your copy of the message, but the sent copy remains. Facebook-owned Instagram has long had the option of unsend for direct messages, while Facebook-owned WhatsApp recently launched a deletion function where unread messages could be deleted for everyone. And then the person who received the message but didn't read it gets a little notification that says, content has been deleted. So you know someone sent you a message and they deleted it, but you don't know what it was, which is good to know, and it's a formality, and it's a good thing for them to provide. But again, why did Facebook buy WhatsApp and Instagram? Well, John Hawkins from the last segment said there is no let's just build a conservative Facebook because everybody's already on Facebook, and why would they migrate over to a conservative version? The reason why it is useless to think about buying a competitor or creating a competitor for Facebook is that whenever Facebook finds out that you're building something that's wildly successful like Instagram, they simply come in and they offer you money to buy it. And so if it's worth $100 million and you won't accept $100 million, they'll offer you $150 million. And with $250 billion in reserves, Facebook can offer you 5, 10, 20 times the value of your company, because it's not that they want to overpay for it, it's that they can. There is no price that's too high for Mark Zuckerberg if you have something that competes with his entity. The other thing that it does is it creates, so there is no, what person in their right mind would say, I own WhatsApp and it's worth $100 million. And I'm just using that number as an example. I own it and it's worth $100 million and I'm making money hand over fist and it's fun to run. I want to build something new. And before you even get off into your little side tangent about what you want to do, Mark Zuckerberg makes you an offer for your company, WhatsApp. He offers you $110 million. And everybody in your world, your lawyers, your financial accountant, your CPA, your tax person, everybody is saying, take it. Take it. You can always build something new and you'll be independently wealthy. Your whole future, everybody in your family's future is now set. And you say, well, I don't want to sell. It's my baby. I love it so much. He comes back in with 150. He's going to keep upping the offer until you sell. So you just wait until you like, this is just such an unbelievable amount of money. I can't say no to it. And that is what he has been doing. That's how he bought Instagram and that's how he bought WhatsApp. But why did he buy them? Because WhatsApp provided an opportunity for people to message without him being able to read the messages. If you're on WhatsApp and you're messaging and he doesn't own WhatsApp, he can't read your messages. And that is why he bought it. But don't take my word for it. There's more. So let's cast our minds back to 2003. 1 year before Facebook was founded, a website called FaceMash, all one word, FaceMash, began non-consensually scraping pictures of students at Harvard University. The school had an intranet. People had their pictures on it, and FaceMash scraped them all up. It then posted and said, hey, rate these Harvard students on their hotness. People participated. Other people got upset, and the website's developer offered an apology. I hope you understand this is not how I meant for things to go, and I apologize for any harm done as a result of my neglect and consider how quickly the site would spread and its consequences thereafter. Who wrote that message? Who gave that apology back in 2003 for something called FaceMash? A young Mark Zuckerberg. I definitely see how my intentions could be seen in the wrong light. A year later in 2004, he co-founded Facebook. We'll continue to unpack this and so much more in Hour 2 of Stacey on the Right. We'll be right back after these important messages. Keep it here.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Would you like to know how you can help the American Family Association celebrate our 40th anniversary? It's simple. All you have to do is purchase your very own In God We Trust poster. You can frame and display it in your home, office, classroom, or get permission to hang it in a public building. Help us remind America of our national motto. Order yours today at afastore.net. That's afastore.net.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis says the U.S. is not ruling out military action against the Syrian regime for its suspected poison gas attack on civilians. Rachel Sutherland has more.
Secretary Mattis pointed the finger at Russia for failing to ensure the Syrian regime rid itself of chemical weapons, telling reporters at the Pentagon.
Working with our allies and partners from NATO to Qatar and elsewhere, we are going to address this issue.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is a war criminal and should be treated like one.
If you have the opportunity to take him out, you should.
The Assad regime has denied the chemical attack. Russia's foreign minister has called the accusation a provocation. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
A crucial midterm election race gets a high-profile candidate. Lillian Wu explains.
Florida Governor Rick Scott makes it official.
I'm announcing I am running for the U.S. Senate for the great state of Florida.
The term-limited Florida governor going after the seat held by three-term incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson in what could turn out to be one of the costliest and most bruising contests this November.
We got to change the direction of this country.
Scott slamming career politicians Washington and his rival, saying Nelson's done nothing in the Senate on issues like gun violence. Nelson says the governor hasn't done enough and that he wants universal background checks. Holding on to the seat is crucial for Democrats hoping to retake the Senate, or at least block Republicans from expanding their majority. Lillian Wu, Fox News.
A conservative activist and political analyst is praying that President Trump stands by embattled EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt. Chad Groening has more.
Scott Pruitt has shaken things up at the Environmental Protection Agency by getting rid of burdensome regulations on businesses and private citizens. As a result, the attacks against Pruitt by the left have been fast and furious, and he has even had death threats made against him. Sandy Rijos is Director of Governmental Affairs at the American Family Association.
To put this in perspective, Donald Trump is the most hated personality in Washington right now by the left. The only person that gets close is Scott Pruitt. The left has been attacking Mr. Pruitt since he was nominated by President Trump, before he was ever confirmed.
Rijos says Pruitt is a conservative who actually believes what he says.
And he believes in doing something about it. You know, when he was Attorney General of Oklahoma, he sued the EPA more than a dozen times because the EPA was so out of control under Barack Obama. So we're witnessing like the quintessential attempt to destroy a person because of his effectiveness.
Rijos wants Trump to stand by as EPA director.
In my heart of hearts, I hope and I pray that President Trump sticks to his guns and he recognizes that Scott Pruitt is a lot like him in the sense of being the object of their wrath for the right reason. And I just hope and pray that President Trump will stand by him. So far, he is.
I'm Chad Groening.
And the leader of a network of pastors says the Trump administration has a better relationship with Israel than any previous administration.
Sam Rohrer, president of the American Pastors Network, says the simple reason America must support Israel is because God does.
God makes it very, very clear that when he established the nation with Abraham, that those nations that would bless Israel would be blessed of God, and those nations who would curse Israel would be cursed of God. It's that simple. The United States wants to be blessed. They will be walking alongside the nation of Israel.
Rohrer notes that, fortunately, the relationship with Israel today under the current presidential administration is totally different than the prior one, as reflected not only by President Trump's relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu, but as reflected in last year's announcement to declare Jerusalem as Israel's capital and the impending relocation of the U.S. embassy there.
That statement and that statement alone has changed world policy. It has turned the heads of those in the United Nations. It has turned the heads of the Islamic enemies of Israel in the Middle East. It is a definitive statement.
Rohrer adds that what America does in relationship to the support of Israel is the difference between experiencing God's blessing or God's judgment on our nation. I'm Bill Bumpus.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Lonnie Poindexter.
Don't ever ask God for patience. Just say, oh, Lord, help me to be more patient. No, don't do that. Well, why, Lonnie? Why shouldn't I do that? He'll give it to you, but you're not going to like how you get it. Well, Lonnie, what do you mean? How do you get patience? Trials and tribulations, my brethren. That's how you get it.
Lion Chasers. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk. Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Well, this is unacceptable. This is information that, first of all, leaked out a long time ago. If you remember, the Carter Page FISA warrant, that had leaked out back in 2016. We fought to get that information. That culminated with finally we were able to send a couple investigators over and Trey Gowdy over that led to the memo that we released. So now people know that the Clinton paid-for dirt was used against the Trump campaign, to spy on the Trump campaign. So our members have been asking to see the underlying information that our investigators have been able to review. So it was nice that they did that, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense because this is something that should have been done a long time ago. What they failed to address is we have been asking, we subpoenaed in August of last year to see a 2-page document, which is called an electronic communication, which is what they used to open the investigation into the Trump presidential campaign in the summer of 2016. We still have not seen that, and we have not seen an fully unredacted version of that document.
Wow. So welcome back to Stacy on the Right here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. And you're listening to Devin Nunes, and he's chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, and he's talking about the objective. Their objective is to gain access to this 2-page electronic communication that initiated the FBI and DOJ NSD investigation into the campaign of presidential candidate Donald Trump. Now, it's clear to me after reading what I've taken the time to read that this was purely based upon their desire to prevent Donald Trump from becoming president of the United States. That's it. They were also looking for an insurance policy just in case he actually won the presidency, which they thought was an almost impossibility. They were perfectly willing to use this, ill-gotten gains to try to unseat him. And now that that's not working, they don't want to let that document out because it's not going to make anybody look good. And so there's a lot of back and forth going on right now, and they want to stop this thing. They don't want it out there. But what does the Bible say? The truth will out. Oh, it's coming out. Now, let's hope it's not like Chappaquiddick. The Kennedys are finally getting their just due after almost all of them have tragically been taken from this earth. Instead of him, Ted Kennedy, having his just desserts while he was alive, he got away with the murder of Mary Jo Kopechne. But, or you could say manslaughter, well, whichever floats your boat. He didn't get away with it forever. He just lived with it. But now he's met his ultimate reward, whatever that was. I'm not even going to speculate. No one gets away with anything, but you can get away with stuff here on earth for extended periods of time when people refuse to prosecute, refuse to bring you to justice. And that's what happened with him. Let's hope that's not what happens with the situation with the investigation into why these people thought they had the right to use taxpayer funded agencies and the government of the United States to try to subvert the will of the American people. I mean, I just can't understand it. I just cannot understand that kind of obliviousness to what your job is when you work for the DOJ or the FBI or et cetera, et cetera. I just don't get that at all. So anyway, I want to get back to this Facebook. And so if you're just tuning into the program, welcome back. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for tuning in. Call lines are open, 866-963-2037. If you want to call in and talk about your experiences with Facebook or what you plan to do, if you've prayed about it and you feel like you're leaving, or if you've prayed and you feel like you're staying, I'd love to hear from you about that, 866-963-2037. I'm going through this history because I feel like, Well, first of all, Facebook has actually gotten they're so adept. They have so many different little bots and algorithms running so that I found this website called Feedster, and you can sign up for it, and it doesn't scrape your data, and it basically aggregates the Facebook posts and the Instagram posts and any blogs that you subscribe to. It puts it all in one place because that's what people love. If people could get their Ben Shapiro, Stacey on the right, Abraham Hamilton III, Will and Miki, get all of their stuff aggregated into one spot and not have to worry about their data being scraped and stolen and sold, or having their mental, day-to-day operations of like, I feel good today, I feel unhappy today, being manipulated by psychologists who are abusing the Facebook platform, they would use that. And that's what Feedster does. And so someone asked me last week when I posted about it on Facebook, I tried to post the link to Feedster and they said, we're not going to allow this to be posted because this is a malicious website. Well, it's only malicious if you think about its intent, which is it's an alternative to Facebook. They also do that with some conservative websites. If I try to post a link from certain conservative websites, they say this website has been found to be outside of Facebook's community standards. In other words, we don't like this website. It tells too much truth. What? So that's what they're doing. But let's talk about what Zuckerberg did in the beginning. And this article was so, I read it and I couldn't believe it. And so I told my husband and the kids, it was over the weekend, I'm like, guys, I read this article about Mark Zuckerberg and how he's been sharing people's information without their permission for over a decade. And they were all like, send it, let's read it. So I printed it off so that, it's easier to read. And that's what they did. You know how hard it is to get every person in your family to read an article? You'll leave it out. You're like, that's a good article. You should read it. And 4 days later, no one's read it. So they read it. They all read it. So I just told you at the end of last segment about how a young Mark Zuckerberg, who hadn't created Facebook yet, created something called Face Mash, and basically gave pictures of people at Harvard. He gave access to those pictures to everyone. Then he apologized. So then a year later, after that data breach, if you want to call it that, or breach of privacy, he then created Facebook. He co-founded it, and it rapidly spread from Harvard, where he created it, to many, many other universities. And so 2 years after that, in 2006, the young company blindsided its users by launching something they called Newsfeed. Now, I wasn't on Facebook back at this point, so it's Newsfeed. Newsfeed collated and presented in one place information that people previously had to search for piecemeal. So you had to go to this page and that page, and you could see this and you could see that. But what Newsfeed did was it took all of that, anybody you're friends with, anyone you're subscribing to, anyone's page you liked, and it put it all inside of one area. And all you had to do was scroll through. Very efficient, very nice. But many users were shocked and alarmed that there was no warning and that their Facebook pages, they felt like they lost control, right? So they're losing control of their information. So what happened? Well, Mark Zuckerberg apologized, of course. He said, this was a big mistake on our part, and I'm sorry for it. We really messed this one up. We did a bad job of explaining what the new features were and an even worse job of giving you control over them. Doesn't that sound sweet, the way he apologizes like that? So before we get to the next segment, because this is the continuing saga, and I want you guys to hear it all. I also want to go over it on the show because this is the place where you can share the podcast. You can share it in email. You can send the link to the YouTube podcast, or you can send the link to urbanfamilytalk.com/Stacy to someone in email, and they can listen to the show so they can be informed about this. And why? Because you're not going to learn it on Facebook. They're limiting the exposure of stories about what Mark Zuckerberg has done wrong, which is what I would do, I suppose, if I owned access to billions of people. I wouldn't want them sitting around saying bad things about me all day. So I would limit their access to be able to share stories that were bad about me. Human nature, I guess. Right now, I want to go to the phones. I love it when the listeners, who are some of my favorite people ever, call in. Steve in Missouri. Steve, thanks for calling the show today. Oh, no. I think we lost him. All right. Well, if you call back, Steve, we'll definitely come to you. So back to the story. So now it's 2007. Okay. So the second apology was in 2006 with the introduction of Newsfeed. Now it's a year later. Facebook has a beacon advertising system. That's what it's called, beacon. It was launched without proper controls or consent and ended up compromising user privacy by making people's purchases public. So you're on Facebook, something's advertised to you, you buy it. Has this happened to you before? I know it's happened to me. I bought things through the Facebook platform. Now, what happens is if you buy it on the platform, just as an aside, if you're thinking about doing this, if you click through to the platform and buy something from, say, like ModCloth, like a dress or a shirt or something, it doesn't automatically load your information like it does if you go to your Safari and click through, because basically the IP address is different if you're coming through the Facebook app. So if you come through your own Safari on your phone, it will pre-populate your information and automatically log you into the website if you've ever been there before. If you do it on Facebook, it doesn't do that. So that's why I click away. I basically just click to the same item in Safari and then I purchase that way. It does provide me some protection because I just learned this. Apple doesn't allow Facebook's app to scrape that data. So things you search for, it can pick that up, but it can't pick up the other personal data like your logins and stuff. So there is something to be said for Apple's encryption system and the controls and barriers that they've set up between the apps and the users' personal devices. So 50,000 Facebook users signed an e-petition, this is in 2007, titled "Facebook, Stop Invading My Privacy." So Zuckerberg responded with an apology. He says, "We simply did a bad job with this release, and I apologize for it." He promised to improve. "I'm not proud of the way we've handled this situation, and I know we can do better." So now it's 2008. He'd written only 4 posts on Facebook's blog, and every single one of them was an apology or an attempt to explain a decision that had upset users. So now, fast forward 2 more years, and we're in 2010. I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna break here before 2010. We'll pick it up in a second. Let's talk to Steve in Missouri. Steve, thanks for calling the show today. Oh my gosh. All right, let's talk to Tony in Louisiana. That's weird. I know our phone system is not owned by Facebook, and he's not trying to prevent me from talking to the listeners. All right, so now we're at 2010. So you've got Facebook violating users' privacy by making key types of information public without proper consent or warning. You surprised? It's a little bit of a pattern here, right? So this time, Zuckerberg responded with an apology, but in a newspaper. He put an op-ed in the Washington Post, and he said, "We just missed the mark. We heard the feedback. There needs to be a simpler way to control your information. In the coming weeks, we will add privacy controls that are much simpler to use." I'm going to run out of space here, so let's jump to 2018 and skip over all the other mishaps and apologies and promises to do better. And oh yeah, the consent decree that the FTC made Facebook sign in 2011, charging that the company had deceptively promised privacy to its users and then repeatedly broken the promise in intervening years. Now we're up to 2018. So last month, and this story is in wired.com, it was published 4/7/18. Last month, Facebook garnered widespread attention with a privacy-related backlash because we just found out that between 2008 and 2015, thousands of apps scraped data from Facebook users, not just from the users who downloaded the apps, but detailed information from all their friends as well. Now, the reason I'm explaining this is because I've already had people post on Facebook and passively aggressively suggest that I'm some kind of, snowflake or basically I'm obtuse because I didn't realize that this could happen. You didn't read your user agreement. Well, I actually have read through it, but not every single iteration of it. I'm like most people. I skim through for the changes. I get exhausted by the time I've swiped through 80 times. And then I'm like, okay, how bad could it be? So I have read it all the way through one time. I admit it. Okay. No reason for me to hide this from you because I know I'm not the only one who's in this situation. Here's what I didn't know. I realized that they had all of the information that I shared, the pictures, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't realize that an app like Words with Friends or there's a bunch of different ones that I've used before, that those apps were scraping data from the private side of my phone. Now, I just recently learned, because I was all outraged about it, that they didn't get my text messages off of my phone or my emails or anything because of Apple's encryption service. But if you had a Google phone, they got your text messages. So those angry texts you sent back and forth to your kids or your husband or your mom or your aunt or your sister, they have all those texts and other data. That's not what you signed up for when you downloaded the app. But it was. That's exactly what you signed up for. This is an in-depth topic. We're going to come back with it. We'll also come back with some phone calls, 866-963-2037 if you want to call in and join the program. You stay right there. We'll be back with more after these messages.
The influence of media is so very powerful over a person.
American Family Association and the family of Anna Bright want to warn you about the Netflix program 13 Reasons Why.
I really feel in my heart with all my soul that show contributed to her passing.
After binge-watching Season 1 of 13 Reasons Why, 14-year-old Anna Bright committed suicide in the same manner depicted on the show.
To portray suicide, first of all, as an option is not a good thing. To portray it graphically, it leaves you vulnerable to the enemy's attack, which I think it definitely did for our daughter.
She took a permanent solution to a temporary situation.
Help protect our teens by signing the AFA petition urging Netflix to pull Season 1 and cancel the upcoming Season 2 of 13 Reasons Why. You can see Anna's story and sign the petition at afa.net. That's afa.net.
This is Mason Weaver, bringing you the truth right between their lies.
Greetings, folks. This is CAMason.com, ClarenceAMason.com, with the truth between the lies. And there are many lies out there right now. If you want to listen to them, the lie that Allah and God are the same. Allah is just the Islamic name for God. No, it is not. Your God is different. There is a difference. Does Allah have a son? Is Jesus Christ their Lord and Savior? Can anyone get to Allah without going through Jesus? There's a difference between Allah and God. And we have to stop and one day stand up for that difference, folks. You cannot hide behind it. You cannot be afraid to offend. You have to proclaim that empty tomb and that bare cross, the blood-stained ground below it. That is your testimony, and you better be willing to stand for it. The major difference between Allah and God is that while my God died for me, their God requires them to die for him. And there is a difference. And you better be willing to proclaim it, because that's the only way you're going to sustain who you are. We have been backing up long enough. Now we have your government trying to bring more folks who don't agree with you into your company, into your home. This is our nation. It is our home. And we decide who visits, and we decide who stays. Don't be ashamed to say no to what they're doing to you. That's what you have to do. This is ClarenceAMason.com with the truth between the lies.
You have been listening to Mason Weaver. Our email address is ClarenceAMason@ClarenceAMason.com. Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the program.
I'll tell you, I'm going to be listening for every word out of her mouth, because Loretta Lynch should be talking to a lawyer, and so should Jim Comey. They shouldn't be talking to the American public about book sales and interviews. Brian, I believe they may have some very serious criminal liability on potential obstruction of justice charges based on their handling of the Clinton case. But here's a couple of questions for her. Number one, why did you ask them to refer, Jim Comey that is, to the investigation into the Hillary Clinton issue as a matter? It was not a matter. It was an investigation? And secondly, what did you do to authenticate the information that came in on the dossier? The Department of Justice had a role in that in the Woods procedure. What did she do? What did she know? And when did she know it? She may be in real trouble here.
All right, that's Dan Bongino. He was talking about Loretta Lynch and how she may have obstructed justice to bail out Hillary Clinton. Excellent commentary there from him. Really, it's kind of wait and see mode. She possibly may have, but we need evidence of that before we can fully go forward thinking that through. So I actually sent the text to the wrong person. I was meaning to send it to my producer, but right now I want to check and see, do we have Tony from North Carolina on hold?
Well, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Welcome to the program.
Yeah. Oh, great. I'm doing great. I listen to you every day. You are fabulous. You're really fabulous.
Thank you.
My remark is towards Facebook, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't Facebook governed, or can they be governed by the FCC? It seems like to me that Zuckerberg has too much freedom. He has too much liberty to basically do what he wants. Like for instance, they if you go to their game room, specifically poker, you will see that people will actually pay real dollars just to play poker. I mean, with nothing in return.
Oh,
yeah.
On the app? You mean inside of Facebook?
Inside of Facebook, yes. I believe it's called Rock and Roll Poker or something like that. It's owned by an application, but however it goes through Facebook. So they actually pay. To purchase chips. They can pay up to $200, but with nothing in return.
In-app purchases.
They just basically win. I'm sorry.
In-app purchases. So yes, I know what you mean by that. So here's my understanding of it. And our first hour guest was talking about having them regulated by the as a utility or regulated by the FCC. It's a monopoly. And the reason it's a monopoly, and just in my understanding of what a monopoly is that because they have the $250 billion in reserves, they are able to crush any competitor. And because there is no viable competitor to Facebook that can ever exist because Facebook would simply purchase them, that means that they have to be broken up, kind of like the Ma Bell and Pa Bell, Southwestern Bell, all those different ones that were that became AT&T and then were broken up and, became AT&T again. It was the phone service that was broken up because no competitor could exist. It's the same thing with Facebook. The reason I think they need to regulate it is because ideologically, if it's a community as it's advertised, but they're selling the data of Americans without their permission, and they make it so difficult for you to control it. In other words, they've purchased a part of you. When you sign the user agreement, they're saying, now we have access to all your pictures and we don't ever have to delete them. We don't ever have to give them back. We've basically purchased them from you. You've given the rights to them over. That to me is a new frontier where we do need some regulation. And I agree with John Hawkins that as conservatives, we don't need to deny that. We don't have to be afraid to say we need regulation in an area just because we're conservatives. I agree with you. I think it's weird because, see, that's a part of Facebook I don't know anything about, the whole poker side. I don't know anything about the gambling.
I think the main problem is it's the liberals. The liberals always say the conservatives always want to regulate things, but things do need to be regulated.
Mm-hmm.
We need government in this country, and Facebook is a prime example. I think Zuckerberg is worth over $6 billion or something like that, and you are absolutely correct. He can buy out other people, other companies, whether he needs that company or not. He can just buy it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at some point he needs to be stopped. He needs to be governed. And again, Stacey, I just want to say that it'll be great to watch Stacey Washington on CNN.
Yeah.
You need your own show. I mean, Joy in the Morning has hers, so you should get yours. I just want to say that.
Thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you very much. That's really nice of you to say. I appreciate you listening and calling in today. It's great to chat with you. I got to say, you know something is bad when you have conservatives and moderates and Republicans going, we might need some regulation. You know things have gotten scary when we get there. So now I want you guys to get the rest of this info. And this is super important because of the scope of what we're talking about here. And if you're just tuning in, our nice caller that just called, Tony, and the discussion we've been having, and our first guest actually weighed in on this as well. It's this basically the history of Mark Zuckerberg with private information. And that's what I'm sharing with you right now. So we know he deleted messages that he thought might make him look bad. He deleted them. He lifted them out of the recipient's Facebook message accounts. He did that to protect himself and other executives in the company just in case there was a data breach. He didn't offer you that opportunity to protect yourself, but he did it for himself. So now you know about the data breach, up to 87 million users in the United States. And then it was shared with Cambridge Analytica. A part of the story that the mainstream media is ignoring is that Barack Obama receives the same access during Organizing for America and both of his runs up to the presidency. He utilized Facebook heavily. There are pictures of him meeting with Facebook executives, taking trips out to Facebook in California. They even said, we like sharing information with him because we're rooting for him. They were open about it. So please don't make this about Donald Trump. If you think that the Cambridge Analytica story is about Donald Trump and the 2016 election, you've been sold a bill of goods by the mainstream media, and that's exactly what they want you to think because they want to keep you in the dark. All of the liberals were using Facebook, and it was all copacetic while they were doing it. But as soon as Donald Trump used Facebook to help boost his campaign, now they need to pump the brakes and start deplatforming conservatives because we ain't going to have none of that. Facebook is for us, not you, us. Do you see that? That's not okay. So first, Facebook was defending themselves, and Facebook has claimed that people have consented to these terms. They claim that in the disclosures buried somewhere in the dense language surrounding obscure user privacy controls, that people basically asked to have their data scraped because they signed off on those terms and agreements. It's not dying down. Facebook has announced changes recently. They said it's time to make our privacy tools easier to find because I don't know if you've seen the videos that are out there, but there are videos of people changing their privacy controls and then they click the back button and the privacy controls are dismantled and they have to start all over again. So you actually have to exit out of the page in a certain way. And if you don't, Facebook just basically, it turns what you turned on, turns it right back off. So Zuckerberg again went on an apology tour, giving interviews to the New York Times, CNN, Recode, Wired, and Vox, but not to The Guardian or The Observer, both UK outlets that actually broke the Cambridge Analytica story. Again, Mark Zuckerberg, I quote, "I'm really sorry that this happened," he told CNN. "This was certainly a breach of trust." He didn't stop at an apology this time. He defended Facebook as an idealistic company that cares about its users. He spoke disparagingly about rival companies that charge users money for their products while maintaining a strong record in protecting user privacy. The reason he doesn't charge money from us is because he charges the people who buy the data from him. That's how he makes the money. And he uses that as a way to make you feel safe and secure. I don't charge you to use my service. But if he's not charging you, that means he's got something of yours that he's selling. And we are all aware of that. None of us walked into this thing with our eyes closed thinking that access to our buying habits and things like that weren't being collated and sold. It's the private stuff that we're not really understanding. Why do you need that? So, the writer of this piece says that it's an interesting argument coming from the CEO of Facebook, a company that essentially holds their users' data hostage. Apple charges handsomely for their products, but they also include advanced encryption software on their phones. They deliver timely security updates to their whole user base, and they largely lock themselves out of the user's data. So much so that governments have complained about it. Do you remember that terror attack where they wanted the phone unlocked, and Apple said, we won't do it because if we do it for you, we'll have to do it for every police officer and everybody else. So find another way to do what you need to do. We're not going to unlock this phone. And people were actually screaming about that. And I remember thinking to myself, thank God they're holding their guns. If they knuckle under for this one time, they'll get a back door to everybody's phone and the government will be all up in the phones the same way they're all up in your metadata. Now, I don't know if you know this, but Facebook cooperates with foreign governments that basically torture their like China. They have cooperated with China in turning over the names of dissidents and people who've done wrong things so that those people can be prosecuted. Quote fingers. They've also turned over someone in, it's either India or Iran. A guy made a caricature of Muhammad and they wanted to know who he was. And Facebook knuckled under and turned over the information and they've killed that guy. They've executed him. So there is a difference between Facebook and Apple. As many problems as you can have with Apple and the expense of their products and the way, you at least they don't participate in people being prosecuted by their governments for something like drawing a cartoon. So Android phones, in contrast, gravely lag behind in receiving security updates, have no specialized encryption software, and often handle privacy controls in a way that is detrimental to user interests. Few governments or companies complain about Android phones. After the Cambridge Analytica scandal, it came to light that Facebook had been downloading and keeping all of the text messages of their users on the Android platform, the content as well as the metadata. So the nudes, the sex pics, all that inappropriate stuff that Android users were sending to each other under cover of darkness and privacy, Facebook has all that. Facebook has every single message, every single picture. If you're an Android user and you downloaded the Facebook app, they got your stuff. The users consented, Facebook cried out, but people were soon posting screenshots that showed how difficult it was for a mere mortal to discern what was going on, let alone figure out how to opt out on the vague permission screen that flashed before the users. On Apple phones, however, Facebook couldn't harvest people's text messages because the permissions would not allow it. In the same interview, Zuckerberg took wide aim at the oft-repeated notion that if the online service is free, you, the user, are the product. He said he found the argument, if you're not paying, that somehow we can't care about you, to be extremely glib and not at all aligned with the truth. But the fact is, that's exactly what it is. So, as far as this writer can tell, not once in his apology tour has Zuckerberg asked what on earth he means when he refers to Facebook's 2 billion plus users as a community. I believe he refers to it that way in the communistic sense. All your thoughts belong to us. We are Facebook, like the Borg. A community is a set of people with reciprocal rights, powers, and responsibilities. If Facebook was really a community, Zuckerberg would not be able to make so many statements about unilateral decisions that he has made. And make no mistake about it, his decisions are final. He controls all of the voting stock in Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg controls all of the voting stock in Facebook. So while the company is publicly traded, the stock that has votes is controlled by Mark Zuckerberg. That's the way the company is structured. So, whenever, and I explained this to you, I want to recap this. Whenever a serious competitor to Facebook has arisen, the company has quickly copied it, like they copied Snapchat, or purchased it, like they purchased WhatsApp and Instagram, often at a mind-boggling price that only a behemoth with massive cash reserves could afford. People do not have any means to completely stop being tracked by Facebook. Their surveillance follows them not just on the platform, but elsewhere on the internet. Some of them can't even apparently text their friends without Facebook trying to snoop in on the conversation. Facebook doesn't just collect data itself. It has purchased external data from data brokers. They create shadow profiles of non-users. They're now attempting to match offline data to their online profiles. They also have the facial recognition software that identifies people who are in your picture that have never been tagged, and they know those people aren't on Facebook. So there's no other way to interpret Facebook's privacy invading moves over the years. even if it's to simplify, as anything other than decisions driven by a combination of self-serving impulses, namely profit motives, structural incentives inherent to the company's business model, and the one-sided ideology of their founders and some executives. So Facebook does provide real value to the users, but it also crushes, buys, and copies all of its competition. Fundamentally, Facebook's business model and reckless mode of operating are a giant dagger threatening the health and well-being of the public sphere and privacy of its users in many countries. So we're going to wrap this up in the next segment, and we'll take some more calls. I'm not a Debbie Downer on this, but you got to have this information. I need you to know what's in this article. I'll post it also on Facebook, on Twitter. And I'll have links on the Stacey on the Right show, on the live stream for today's show. And you can click through and read them for yourself and kind of just be informed and figure out what you want to do. All right. Call lines are 866-963-2037. And I'm Stacey Washington. We'll be right back with more.
You guys are truly an asset to the radio waves in Memphis, Tennessee. We appreciate having you guys speak truth. And I know that you guys honestly are trying to be led by the Holy Spirit. If we call Satan's tactics and his agenda out clearly, you guys provide good resources for us to better equip ourselves to walk in Christ. And you guys are just a true asset. Thank you for doing the things that you guys do, but also even just adding truth to the African-American community in a time of chaos and in a time of uncertainty. You guys take us right back to the Bible, which is the only true and certain entity in this present world. And so we thank you.
Pray for God's blessings on our upcoming Share-a-thon so that we can continue to make a difference. Share-a-thon begins Tuesday, April 17th, here on listener-supported Urban Family Talk. Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk. Who is today's urban woman?
Today's urban woman is about empowering herself, empowering her family to empower our future. We have a wealth of opportunities here in America. There are no excuses. Everyone should be able to empower themselves, educate themselves, and be stewards of our society. Today's urban woman, here to stay, and we're moving forward, never looking backward. I'm Deneen Borelli, and I am today's urban woman.
I'm not so certain we have as much time as many of us think. It's high time for the body of Christ to return with a fire lit up under us to proclaiming the truth of God's word, to proclaim the truth of sin and repentance, and not coming from a high, lofty position, but telling the truth as such were some of us. We have to do that. We have to. But what happens is, and I call this first world problem, we have this epidemic of churchianity in America, to where we are far more accepting and far more willing to embrace the trappings of church life, even if they're void of the presence and power and fire of Christ. And I would say to you, just as the Bible says, that we can have a form of godliness while simultaneously, at the exact same time, deny the very power of the gospel.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on Urban Family Talk. Welcome back to Stacey on the Right.
And remember, our committee was the first to ask for those text messages. We were promised that we had all the information as it related to FISA abuse. And then we find out, oh, wait, they were talking to a FISA judge. Now we find out just this week there were additional text messages involving discussions that they were having about the FISA process. The Department of Justice and the FBI knew that we had them under investigation for FISA abuse, and they just decided not to give us that information. So my guess is that whatever is in this electronic communication, which we have a pretty good idea, and you know why we have a good idea? Because they leaked it at the end of December. Somebody from the FBI had to have leaked the information that was in that electronic communication to the New York Times. And we need to verify that, if that was an actual, was that leaked to the New York Times? Was that true or not?
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Stacey on the Right here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. I want to go to Steve in Missouri. We've been trying to chat with him. He's been calling in, and the phone's been messing up over him. Steve, thanks for calling the show today.
How you doing, Stacey? I listen to you on Allman in the morning all the time. Well, not all the time, whenever you're on, I guess. I just want to touch base, as far as, what everything you've been saying as far as them selling data. Facebook is not the only ones that sell data. I mean, Facebook is just at the nucleus as far as, the attention as far as what's, being sold. Having said that, there's all kinds of other websites that sell data, like Cabela's, you name it, the mom and pops T-shirt stores. They sell data as well. So it's only a matter of time before government regulation comes into play. And they're going to there's going to be a lot of class action lawsuits. Let's put it that way. I mean, it's only a matter of time before ClassAction.com gets involved with a lot of this kind of stuff. And pretty soon, Facebook will be not necessarily out of business, but diminished to a point to where, a lot of their source code will be sold to other companies, and there'll be a lot of other social websites. So basically, Facebook will be given offspring to a lot of other social websites, kind of like MySpace gave birth to Facebook, etc. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. Because the difference between MySpace and Facebook is that, so MySpace just kind of went out of vogue and people stopped using it, and then and it kind of coincided with the rise of Facebook. But MySpace wasn't large enough to crush competitors. So they never had an adversarial business model. And they never really made it their business to try to go outside of the platform and purchase other data brokers. So I understand what you're saying. You're saying, hey, other people are selling data. Of course. Other people are tracking our data. Of course. But there's only one entity with so much access. So they've been able to experiment on the users. They've been able to sell information to researchers who have then collated that information and been able to use it to create kind of predictive methodologies on how people will behave in certain circumstances. They've run the experiments and then used that information to inform artificial intelligence development. So there's something bigger and more dastardly and much more pernicious about Facebook than anything that ever came before it. It is a unique monster in that the creator of it went in with his eyes wide open. So it's not that he's apologized over and over again because he's been surprised by the reactions of people. In every case, the reaction that people had after that first time, after he shared the information on Harvard's campus and people got mad, every time after that, anyone with common sense would say, people will get angry when I put their information in this form. And he took the gamble, and every single time it paid off, because instead of users dropping off, he gained more users after so he made newsfeed, he got more users. He made the changes to the algorithm, he got more users. Every single change he's ever made, there's a backlash, but more users pour in. And so, I don't think the way to manage Facebook is that it's going to go away. People already said they didn't want to, like, my kids told me Snapchat's the new thing. So Facebook copied Snapchat. My kids told me Facebook is for older people. It's for grownups. Young people use Instagram. So Facebook bought Instagram. There is no new thing that can be made that Facebook cannot simply purchase if it becomes popular and a threat to the Facebook platform. And that makes this a uniquely different problem, in my opinion.
And you did talk about the Android users. I'm an Android user.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't use apps on my Android. I only use my cell phone for talk and text. And that's about it. So for any kind of other apps or whatever, but that doesn't matter. Because they can still get your email address and everything else, and that's how you get all those spams in your spam folders.
Well, if you're not using any apps on your phone, then you were really smart about it. But the problem is most people have used at least one app of some sort, and a lot of people downloaded the Facebook app because they didn't read the user agreement. But I totally get what you're saying. Thank you for calling the show. It's great to talk to you. Happy Monday. Now I want to. So we have just this little bit here that we can get through, and we have a few minutes left in the program. So let me get the rest of this. There's just one or two more pieces of information from this piece. And again, these will all be up in the links on stacyontheright.com. So Facebook's business model and reckless mode of operating are a giant dagger threatening the health and well-being of the public sphere and the privacy of the users in many countries. And so the writer says, here's the thing. There is indeed a case of Stockholm Syndrome here. There are very few other contexts in which a person would be allowed to make a series of decisions that have obviously enriched themselves while eroding the privacy and well-being of billions of people, to make basically the same apology for those decisions countless numbers of times over the space of just 14 years, then profess innocence, idealism, and complete independence from the obvious structural incentives that have shaped the whole process. This should ordinarily cause all the other educated, literate, smart people in the room to break out in howls of protest, laughter, or tears. Facebook has tens of thousands of employees, an open culture, strong internal communications, but it should be plain to all of us that Facebook's 2 billion plus users are surveilled and profiled, and their attention is then sold to advertisers and anyone else who will pay Facebook, including unsavory dictators like the Philippines' Rodrigo Duterte. That is Facebook's business model. We can no longer deny this. So no one beyond Facebook's sovereign and singular ruler can convince him that these are horrible things, that we need a healthier way forward. He keeps repeating himself. Sorry, we meant well. We'll fix it this time. For the same betrayal that has happened time and time again over the past 14-year period. And so he feels like this is a case of Stockholm Syndrome. He goes on to recommend an ombudsman's office with real teeth and power, an institution within the company that can act as a check on their worst powers and things like that. I'm sorry. I just don't think an internal organization can do the job, because they're going to have the same culture in there, which is they revere Mark Zuckerberg because he has created this thing that has made so many people wealthy and given so many people jobs. And so that brings me to the last bit in our whole Facebook expose that we've got here. And so here's the thing. I'm going to preview this for you. I have so much more. I have 4 other stories with details that I'd never known before, that again, I'm just trying to live and just, be a regular human being. And every story about Facebook, it's all just coming right to me. I can't ignore it anymore. And I feel like, to me, when things are that patently obvious, that I'm supposed to put it out here on the show so you guys can be informed. And then you can take it however you want. I'm not here to convince you to leave Facebook. I'm not here to convince you that Mark Zuckerberg is the devil. I am here to let you know all of the things that I just recently learned so you can be informed. And then if you decide to leave, because see, the thing about this whole story is that it hurts me show-wise, because I got the microphone, I got the whole, we got all the broadcasts going on, we have the syndication, and that's the bread and butter right there. That's where it's at. That's why I do the stuff that I do, is so I can get behind this microphone. This is the gift that God has given me to do this job. It's the best thing ever. But I utilize the online social media to spread what we're doing here. So if all of it went away, if it was suddenly outlawed, we still have this radio show and you can still come here and listen to it. You don't need a live stream when you can just go to the website and listen to the podcast after the show is over. The show is also broadcast at different times of the day. So if you miss it during the day, you can catch it at night on afr.net. You can catch it on the weekend. But once you've spent all that time linking all that together, it's kind of like, well, Lord, what is this? Like, am I supposed to keep doing this? And so that's the throes of the decision that is facing not just me, but so many other people. That's why I shared what happened to Diamond and Silk, because they've spent not as long as I have, chronologically speaking. They became a thing during the last election in 2015 or so. I've been doing this online social media for much longer than that. But the point is they put a lot of time and money into it. They paid for ads and all that stuff. I've done that, but I don't do it as much anymore. In fact, I don't buy any Facebook ads anymore. And so they've been kicked off. So the question for all the rest of us is, well, what are we going to do? We have to be prepared for the eventuality that their fate is our future. So this piece, which will also be on the page, is over at NPR Radio. Don't believe Facebook. You only have 150 friends. This piece is from 2011, and it goes into some of the really interesting backstory. So it's about Gore-Tex. The company that makes wetsuits, hiking boots, and ponchos is the subject of a famous anecdote in the world of sociology centering on the guy who founded the company. His name is Bill Gore. When he set the company up, he set it up in his backyard, and as it grew and grew, he opened up a large factory, and one day he walked in and he said he simply didn't know who everybody was. He wondered why this was. His gut instinct was that the bigger the company got, the people working for the company were much less likely to work hard and help each other out. And it was true. So to boil it all down, he reduced each of his factories to 150 people, and all of the problems that happened when his company expanded and he had the one large factory evaporated, because people have the capacity to personally know and interact with on a regular basis 150 people. You can know the names and personal information of larger numbers of people, but deep interpersonal relations, people cap out at 150. And so that's what makes a good working environment. And so the military is loosely based on that concept, with squadrons and companies and different individual units that make up larger battalions so that people can know each other and work well together in a cohesive fashion and optimize their effectiveness. This 150 people is the magic number. So, of course, I read this story and my eyebrows went way up into my head because, I have thousands of friends on Facebook. A bunch of them I used to know interpersonally very closely because I went to high school with them. A few others I was in college for a while and I knew them. And then many other of them I've had relationship with, but they've kind of moved out and others have moved in to replace them. And then there's a core group of real friends. And the real friends are not 150. So I'm pointing this out to you because in the end, our pastor has talked about this many times during the past couple of years. Our pastor has mentioned to us that, in times like these where we see the rise of, homosexual marriage as the law of the land, the perversion of people mutilating their bodies because they're mentally ill and they don't know what gender they are. They have gender dysphoria. And so many other indicators, the breakdown of the family, the breakdown of marriage, the breakdown of civility in our culture. And we see people running away from God. They're not just moving away from him. They're running against him, away from him, flying the middle finger and saying, look, you can't tell me what to do. I'm going to keep living. Like the way Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, has recently said, California is the future of America. Illegal immigration, rampant rape and crime, a busted budget, and wasted natural resources. That's the future of America, according to Jack Dorsey. We Christians have to be prepared, and the more time we spend on Facebook, the less time we're spending in the Word and with each other, building each other up. This is a tough subject. It really is. It's amazing how much of our lives are dominated by social media. But we're going to keep having these conversations here on the program, and we're going to figure this thing out. with God's help, of course, because we can do all things through him and nothing without him. We'll be back with more Stacey on the Right tomorrow here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. See you then.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family Association.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
As millennials, we have more than $1 trillion in purchasing power. So you know businesses are watching us.